This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
This is Christina Rasmussen, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, cultural creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back. Thank you guys for downloading. This is Your Superior Self, and I'm Trey Downs, and I cannot be more happy that you're here with me right now because today's author, Dena Merriam, is a profound storyteller. She's an author of the new book, When the Bright Moon Rises, The Awakening of Ancient Memories, Past Life Recall. And you guys know how much I love that. You guys know how much I'm into past life regressions and past life recall and experiencing those memories that have been long forgotten in our unconsciousness in the shadows of our memory. And Dena has done a fantastic job of writing this book and being very detailed in her own accounts of her past life regressions. And it's just so beautifully interwoven with the storylines from one life to another and how they overflow and how they relate. And I'm very excited to talk to her because she talks about that process, what it looks like for her, and it helps us connect to that creativity for our own selves and how we can draw from that and it overflows in other areas of our lives. Very excited about her joining. And for those who do not know who she is, she's an author, storyteller, and the founder of the Global Peace Initiative of Women, GPIW, which seeks to bring spiritual resources to address critical global challenges such as conflict, social justice, and ecological scarring of the earth. So she is doing the work, and she is out there putting in the work. Yeah, I am just super stoked. And here's a little clip before we get into it.
But we determine our own path in life. Our past has determined our present, which means that our present is determining our future. So we can do that more consciously or we can do it less consciously. That's the choice we have. And if we know that our past has created the conditions of our present, then we can more consciously create what we want in the future. What do we want our future to be? We can take control of that situation, of that process.
That's probably one of the most prolific statements that I've heard, right? Like, your past determines the now determines the future. And a lot of people don't want to hear that because they don't want to take ownership of the outcomes of their lives because they want to be the victim. They are more comfortable being the victim. It takes a lot of responsibility off of them to own their choices, to own their results. And I can look back at my life and I can see where I've done that. And I can see my choices that I've made in the affirmations that I made back then, not knowing what they were. I didn't know they were affirmations. I didn't know that I was speaking and creating my reality. And then now that I look back, I 100%, every choice that I made, everything that happened to me back then has created the environment and the reality that I am in now. I mean, it's a great reality, don't get me wrong, but a lot of my choices, I've been able to manifest my reality for myself currently. And there are some things that I would change 100%, but that's life, right? Like, I mean, you're flowing through life, and, not everything's going to be perfect. Things are going to be difficult, but that's all about the learning experience and growing your spirituality and growing your being and your source and your consciousness and raising that and being able to learn more from raising your own consciousness and connecting with higher sources of information from the universe. And the one thing that I really hope that people awaken to is that even if you're right now living the victimhood or victimization of your life, like, you think that you are the victim of your circumstances, of your parents, of your environment, of your community, of your culture, like, you can break out of that right now just by realizing that you're here for a reason to learn in your situation, in your circumstances. And just know that all your choices, everything that you've made up to this point has led you to where you are, and you can absolutely change that. You can alter that. You can go down a different path and start to live a different life by making different decisions. I'm not just saying, oh, well, you have to go to the gym, you have to start running. These are just all different things that you can do. Go back to school. You can just change your thought process, change your thoughts, be more positive. Like, start speaking affirmations about how you are strong or you are healthy. Stop believing everything that you're hearing from other people that you know is not right. These are just small steps that you can make in your life to change it and alter it dramatically. Dramatically. It is very hard to stay positive because we live in this reality that is very dense and it's very just, sticky. People don't like to see other people happy because why? Because they get jealous that they're happy. Or you start doing hard work, you start doing, exercising, eating healthy, doing the right things, not hanging out with the same people. And what does that do? It creates a mirror for the other people to see themselves through you and what they're not achieving. So what do they want to do? They want to go and grab onto you and bring you back down to the level. And I'm telling you, small steps, baby steps to greatness, baby steps to changing your life is just waking up in the morning, just saying affirmations. I am happy and I am healthy and I'm abundant. And then go through your day and see how that changes for you. But you got to believe it. You got to be that. I am happy. I am healthy. I am abundant. And you just start seeing it overflowing. You create that energy for yourself and you start seeing it in your life open up other avenues, other opportunities. I'm telling you, you can create better opportunities for yourself just with this one affirmation. I create all opportunities. I capitalize on every moment, and you will see changes. And it's all about believing in yourself and believing in that source and not listening to the outer self and the outer voices that are trying to live your life for you. Even if you have a bad hand right now in life, you can change it. I'm telling you, regardless of the situation or event, by changing your mindset. Seriously. Right now, this moment is determining your future and what's going to be in your life. And it's going to be hard work. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not like you put up a visualization board and that's it. You have to put in the work. You have to be that person that you want to be in order to get there. And you will see changes. They might be minor, they might be small, but there will be changes. And I hope and I wish that you hear that message. And I cannot wait for you to listen to this episode. Please go to treedowns.com. Leave me a message. Let me know your path. I want to hear your thoughts. And then go to abandonedchildrensfund.org. Look at their organization. Look at what they're doing, the work in the world, helping abandoned children in underprivileged countries be loved, be cared for, fed, and they give them hope and love and education. And if you can't give, just spread awareness, share it on social media so that people can kind of see it and see what it's about and what they're trying to do. And it might motivate somebody to help their organization. So with that said, guys, I cannot wait for you guys to listen to this episode. I love everything. I love the energy behind it, if that makes sense. All right, guys. So without further ado, here is the great and powerful Dena Merriam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dena Merriam, and I'm speaking to you from your superior self.
Dena, thank you so much for taking the time to join the show. I'm a big fan of your book, When the Bright Moon Rises. First off, this is a pretty thick book. So a lot of detail went into these pages, a lot of art, a lot of beauty, past life regressions. This is not the first book that you've written like this. You have another previous book to this. I have so many questions I want to ask you, but first, thank you for joining the show.
I'm happy to be here.
So give me a background on you. Like, how did this start for you? Like, how did you get into spirituality? Was it easy for you? Is it something that you grew up in? Did you have any, religious dogma? Like, what did that look like for you?
I came into pretty much a blank slate. I was born into a secular family and didn't think much about religion or spirituality. Their world was art. My parents were art lovers, art collectors. And that was never my world. And I was always interested in spiritual matters and had a lot of questions. And so I came into the world that way. I did a lot of searching in my teens. And when I was 20, somebody handed me a book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And I saw a picture of my guru, Yogananda. I recognized him right away as being my teacher and wanted to learn how to meditate. And so began a meditation practice at the age of 20. Very serious, I should say. It wasn't a casual thing for me. I really devoted time to it. And I continued my philosophical search, reading masters from many spiritual traditions. And slowly my memories, I always knew that I had lived before. This was not a revelation, even though I had grown up in a Jewish family. So in the West at that time, this was not accepted information. But it was what I felt always to be true. I began having flickers of past life remembrance in my 20s. They continued into my 30s. And then in my late 30s, when I was around 40-ish, I began having very intense experiences, memories of my life just previous to this one. And it was a very intense time because I had just gotten divorced. I was a single mom raising my kids. I had a lot of responsibilities, holding a job as a writer and, raising 2 teenage sons. And yet I was finding myself in the past, in Russia pre-revolution, and then during the revolution, and then in Europe, in pre-Nazi Europe, and then the Nazis and all that. But then I saw that I had met my guru in 1936 when he lived in America. He came from India, lived in America, and took one trip back to India, passing through Germany, where I happened to meet him. And it shed light on so many things, but I was doubtful, I must say. I'd been married to a psychiatrist, so I had enough wherewithal to question myself, and so I actually started checking out the places that I had seen. I checked out, I went to St. Petersburg, where I thought I'd lived my childhood. I went to Prague, where I remembered my last days, found the place where I had seen where the Nazis marched into Prague. And so I was something of a detective during my first excursion into the past. And it all checked out. And after I had the complete story, something else happened to me where I saw the life just previous to that. And again, I began to check things out. And so I had a period of about 10 years going back successively through 7 lives. And I began to see patterns. And this is really what interested me, the patterns. Because to me, it's not, did we live before, is how do you understand? And then how do you begin to take control over your karma, cause and effect? In other words, what's the process that determines where you're born? What are the circumstances in life? That's not happenstance. It's not arbitrary. There are causes that you have initiated yourself in the past. And so we are responsible for everything that has come to us. And so I began to see the patterns, and I began to write the story. And I had no thought to publish it. I was just writing it so I could really look at this period of 7 lives and see the connections and see how it all has led me into where I am today. And a friend of mine, who's a writer also, around that time when I finished the book, had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She was a secular woman, but beginning her spiritual search, she just started TM meditation. And she said, Dena, I know you're writing something. Can I read it? And I said, well, I don't know how you'll feel. It's about rebirth. And she said, well, now I really want to read it. She was dying. And she read the book, and it brought her such comfort in her last days that she said to me, you have to publish this. And then I showed it to some of my spiritual friends who said, Dena, you can't publish this under your name. I said, it's my life, my lives. How could I not? Anyhow, I ended up publishing it. And that I thought that was the end of it. And I thought, well, I've seen all this. It's amazing. Let me just spend my life processing it. And then more stories came to me, and I wrote the book on Sita, and I thought that was the end of it.
Mhm.
And then this book came, which took me back to a far earlier era. And if one asks, how can you remember all those things? Memories are stored away in our unconscious, and they can come out at any time. For me, it's always going to a place or meeting a person that triggers it. But the memories are there.
How do you obtain, right? Like, so I don't question it. I have meditation sessions where it feels like I'm not seeing it with obviously my physical eyes, but I have them closed and I am using my imagination. They seem like an imagination. And then there are times where I'm wakefulness and, throughout the night, and I'll have like some type of, I guess, recall. But it seems like you were able to do this like through your meditation, right?
Yeah, through meditation.
And you can actually see, I mean, this is 7 past lives, very visual. I mean, when I read it, I feel like I'm there. My recall isn't as clear as some of this. I mean, they're lengthy. I mean, you some of the stories are very detailed, and they talk about the struggles that the individuals were going through. So I guess the story that I really liked was the one where the lady was going into the cave to meditate. I can't remember her name. What was her name?
Shu.
So were you meditating about her, and she was meditating within that meditation? I mean, it's just crazy. How did you get there, first off?
So this, I mean, honestly, when I'm going through this, I spend months in a movie. I see it like it's a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I see the scenes, I hear the words. I'm just reliving a movie. It's like you're reliving scenes of a life. And the basic story starts when she's between lives and she is about to meet somebody who she hasn't met in thousands of years, and because of a vow she'd taken. And then she recalls the memories of that life when she met and fell in love during a higher age of a young Brahmin who's a celibate and can't be in relationship with her. And she vows not to see him again because she's so angry at him. And then thousands of years pass. She has many, many different lives. The time has come for them to meet again. So she's born in Tang, China, 8th century China, as a poet. He's also a poet. He actually is a renowned poet. Li Bai is one of the most beloved poets of China even today. And it's known that he had a poet wife. She was his second wife. Not much is known about her, but I found myself living that life of that woman poet. She was never recognized as a poet. She didn't have a lot of confidence in herself, but she's a Taoist. It was known that Li Bai's wife was a very serious Taoist. She's a Taoist and she has a Taoist master. And during her training, she begins to remember some of her previous lives. So it's the first time that I had recalled a life in which my personality at that time was recalling other lives. It's so a crazy. Recall within a recall.
Yeah. Well, when you recall them, right? So can you take me through the process? And my next question is, take me through the process, and then does each session start from where the last one picked up?
No. They don't. I get bits and pieces, and until I get a whole narrative, I don't start to write. I mean, and I can't predict it. I can't say when it's going to happen. I'm sitting in meditation. I meditate every day for a long period of time. And suddenly I find myself in another time period and I'm seeing a scene and I identify with the character in that scene. And I see scenes unfold. And that's all I might get. There might be a few scenes and that's all I get. And and then maybe 2 months later, I get a few more scenes. And I can't make it happen. And I can't resist it, really, because it draws you into it. And then I find myself dwelling on it a lot, kind of reliving it, finding myself. But to me, there are a few key lessons that through this whole process that have emerged. One is that is the law of cause and effect. Is that our desires all find their fulfillment. It may not be in this life. It may not be in the next life. It might be way down in the future. The conditions have to be right. But we determine our own path in life. Our past has determined our present, which means that our present is determining our future. So we can do that more consciously, or we can do it less consciously. That's the choice we have. And if we know that our past has created the conditions of our present, then we can more consciously create what we want in the future. What do we want our future to be? We can take control of that situation, of that process.
I like that. Living, it makes you more conscious in the moment. Do you think that we can kind of, I like to think it as like play like children, right? Like, so everyone gets so bogged down in this dense energy reality that we're in, and we get lost. We forget about who we are and what we're doing. We get caught up in the drama that's unfolding in front of us right now, with society and life and work and kids and everything like that. Do you think that if we become conscious to it, like if we become conscious to the higher being that we are, the connected with the source, right? Do you think that we can co-create with that source in a reality right now where we can, if we can get on the right energy level, the right vibration, that we can kind of play? Like when I say play, I mean like bring things to our lives that allow us to do things that we really dreamed about doing.
That's what we're meant to do.
Yeah.
We're meant to co-create. But most people, we do it unconsciously. For most of us, we're not conscious of doing that. And so it's not a directed process. It's more haphazard, but I think the more we sort of awaken to our higher self, this is the power of the higher self. Our lower self is filled with lower desires and likes and dislikes and responding emotionally to what's thrown at us in life. You get angry, you get frustrated, just you respond to that, to conditions in life. But the higher self has the ability to really attract what we need, to bring into our life what we need, and to shape a more positive, enable us to have a more positive influence on the world. We have tremendous power within us that is unrealized.
What was it your life like what do you remember when you met your guru? Do you still have visions of him? Like, do you remember any of his teachings?
So, but in this life, I was born, my guru passed away, left his body just after I was born. But when I saw him previously, it was just a momentary thing, a brief meeting, which left enough an impression in my mind that in this birth, when I saw his book at the age of 20, I recognized him right away. And because a master is not in the body, doesn't mean that you don't receive his teachings. I mean, he's teaching you moment to moment. It's a matter of tuning in with the teacher. So everything that I have received, I attribute to my meditation, which the gift that he gave me was the ability to meditate, the practice of meditation, the techniques of meditation, and the commitment to it, the commitment to seriously practice it.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. What do you think, like the end game, like for us as soul beings, right? Like we come in, we work. Is it to work the karma off? Is it to so I am legitimately a big fan of Robert Monroe's work. I don't know if you're familiar with his work or not.
I don't know his work.
So his idea is that, he does believe that we are from a source, a creator, and he believes that, there are levels of consciousness, awareness. You go from the earth all the way out to, he had levels. I mean, he had different levels, and through these levels, you reach like belief systems, and then you go higher and you go into higher and higher and higher. And then eventually you reconnect with your one true self. And then it's kind of like the same thing where you awaken and then you connect with your higher self, and then your higher self awakens and connects with the higher self. And it's like, we're just all trying to connect with that higher self. Why do you think we come here on earth, right? Like, why is it that we're here? And two, what is it that we're looking for?
I think what we're looking for is love. And I think we're looking for oneness, unity. And it's unity with that source, which is the source of love. I mean, one thing that I have, I just consider all my books to be love stories in a way, because that's what everybody's searching for. Everybody's searching for love. Not a human type of love, but a higher form of love that's not conditional. It's not like, you do this for me and I do that for you, and if you don't behave in a certain way, sorry. It's not that kind of love, that fades. Mm-hmm. It's much, much deeper. And in the higher, I relate to what you just said, because there are all different levels of existence, right? There are what we call, what had been called celestial worlds, which we might call other dimensions, subtler dimensions of being. So in these other dimensions, beings are far more manifesting their higher self. And what does that higher self feel like? What does it look like? Well, when are we happiest? I mean, we're happiest when we're feeling not an attachment, but just love is a state of being. Mm-hmm. It's not an emotion. We confuse attraction and attachment with love. But when we're in that state of being, that state of love, that's when we're the happiest, because that's coming closer to what our higher nature is, the higher self is, that state of love. When you think of all of the higher beings that are continually trying to help us and aid us, I mean, they're not doing it because they're looking for anything back. They're doing it because that is their nature, just to give, to emit love. And in a book that I just finished, which will be out sometime later this year, it talks about a relationship with one of those higher beings. Because my interest, in writing my 3 books, the result has been that time has become so elastic for me. I don't think in terms of one life. I don't think in terms of 100 years. I think in terms of thousands of years. And I think of myself as being around for a very long time, a very long past and a very long future. But in writing the book that I'm just finishing now, the same thing has happened with the spatial dimension. There are other dimensions of existence that we can be in touch with. The more awakened you are, the more aware you are of the beings in those higher dimensions.
How do you become awakened to that though, right? Like, how do you connect with that?
Well, it's the work of a lifetime, really. I mean, I think that one has to see it as the work of many lifetimes. Is that there are many ways you can read about it. I mean, ultimately, you have to do the inner work, whether it's meditation or prayer, some form of contemplation. People have different avenues, for everyone, they have to find their own path. For me, it's been meditation. And I think, everything that I've come to see and know, I think has come to me through my many, many years of meditation. Sure. But you have to have patience with it. I mean, it doesn't happen in 6 months. It's a lifetime effort of trying to overcome the limitations of the human senses and the human mind.
What was your most recent past life?
When I talked about my recent past life, I talk about it in another book called My Journey Through Time, a spiritual memoir of life, death, and rebirth. And I was born in Russia before the revolution, around the early 1900s, and was sent out of Russia during the revolution, and died in Europe after the Nazis had taken over much of it, and was trying to get to America. Mm-hmm. And at the end of my life, I have a vision where my guru comes to me and says, I've come to take you to America. And then I die and I'm born in America.
Have you ever meditated in India?
I go to India a lot.
Yeah. What is that like? I feel like India can kind of be intimidating a little bit. Like I see pictures or videos and I'm like, man, it looks like it's just like, one of the oldest places in this world. And it's like, you got, the highest populations there. You got a lot of things going on. Like I think it can be overwhelming for some people, but then like you got like, you know, secluded areas where there's nothing going on, and you just go into these ashrams and you can meditate and just kind of sit. Like you don't know. Like I'm assuming I don't ever been there. Maybe I haven't. Maybe definitely not in this life. I don't know what previous lives. But like I'm assuming like the quiet there is like a quiet you've never heard of in your life.
So my times in India, I've spent a lot of time going into the high places of the Himalayas, 12,000 feet up into the very sacred places. They used to be deserted. Of course, now there's much more traffic there. And, they've have semi-decent highways up there. I mean, I've been going there over a period of time, and I've seen how development is slowly creeping up there. First, you couldn't get a hotel. It was like a little West house with no hot water, no heat. Now, of course, you can get hot water and heat. So India's changed a lot. It's become much more, many more creature comforts. You can go there very comfortable now. 20 years ago, it was a bit of a hardship. And so India's they're going through great changes. When I go to India, I see what India was long ago, which is a place where there've always been masters. There've always been men and women hidden away, not in the marketplace. They're off out of the way places who have amazing knowledge, wisdom. They're hard to find now. They're certainly not in the main fairs, but there's an energy to the land because it is so ancient. It's a civilization that goes back 10,000 years b.c.e.
Mm-hmm.
The Vedas go back almost that old. They were unwritten. They were spoken for many, many millennia before they were written down. So I've spent a lot of time in the India space, not just physically, but in the spiritual space of India. My guru came to the US in 1920. The first really to bring the teachings of India, teachings of meditation, yoga meditation to America during a time when there was not much other than Christianity here.
Yeah.
So India has played a big role in my development, my spiritual development. And I think when you go there, you can't look at the poverty, you can't look at the pollution. You just have to grow beyond that and see what India has to offer in terms of the sacredness of the space.
When you're over there meditating, have you encountered your guru?
He's not in the body now, so I've not.
Well, I mean, like, yeah. Like, so when I meditate, I can envision Jesus, just because I guess I'm used to that, right? Like I've grown up on that belief, so like I can envision us having a conversation, like whether it's on a beach or a mountain or something like that, and it's real. It's real to me in the meditation. It means a lot, and usually I get a lot of great insight, a lot of great conversation, a lot of great. Like I think I've written it down. I have a meditation journal where it's like, I told him one time, and people have heard it on the show where I've said that, I've told him that, I love you. I love you. And he says, well, if you love me, you love yourself. Because,
beautiful.
We are the same. You and I are the same. And it's like, well, and then it's been a while since I read it, but like at one point it was like, if you love me, you love yourself. Basically he was saying like, also that I've worshiped him my entire life. I never really loved him. I worshiped him because that's what I was taught to do. Worship him because I was taught that. And it wasn't until I stepped back and realized that, I have a hard time loving, period. So like I say I love him, but is that out of my belief, or is that because out of my heart? Like we're just so in the West, we're just so you have to do this because you want to go to heaven. You have to say these things. You have to act this way. Do you accept Jesus into your heart? Yes, I do, because I don't want to go to hell. Like yeah. I want to be forgiven. I want to be saved. I'm saved. I'm good. I'm going to heaven. Like, I mean, that's how it is here. And it's, they drive that fear in your heart. I remember the first time I even heard about being saved. I was like maybe 12, 11 years old. And I was at my cousin's house or something. And they were religious. And I think it was somebody said, "Are you saved?" And I was like, don't know what that means. I hope so. I want to. They're like, "Well, you have to be saved to go to heaven." I'm like, "Well, I want to be saved." And then the next thing I did, I read the apocalypse story and Revelations, and scared to death going to church, trying to get to heaven. And then it's just so funny because like where I am at now, like that is just so far from what I think is God. That belief system, that dogma is just so far from what my idea of what God is now. Like just that love, like in what Jesus really is. Like I'd rather feel what I feel now about Jesus and Buddha and everything else that is divine, Krishna. I'd rather feel this and go to hell than read a book and feel fearful for my life and do the things because it says to do these things. Does that make sense? Like, I just feel more connected. Totally. Because I feel more connected now because I feel like I am connected with my source, my true source. And through these meditations, like you're talking about, like I might get a couple of past life things that I don't know are past life things that are just kind of pop up. But the meditations that I have with myself, with Jesus, that I have there is so powerful that I don't need to doubt that. It's, God is very subjective. He comes to us in different ways because it's our different ways that we learn. It's not, you and I are not the same. We're not on the same path. And I think, he reaches out to everyone. I say he, the source, God, love, all of that, and Jesus's message in my opinion is that, he's talked to me about this in my meditation where him and I are the same. Like him and I are the same. He's just more advanced than I am. Like he's more a higher spiritual being. And some people kind of cringe at that because they're like, well, he's the son of God. He is God. Catholics, he is God. And our conversations are not that. And I feel like that conversation with him in my meditation is deeper than any service that I've ever attended in my life.
Someone once asked my guru if there was hell. And he said, "Where do you think you are now?" So
I can agree. There was some guy who was like, man, I'm gonna butcher this story, but he was like, hell is, basically hell is what you make it, right? Hell is, I don't know what his name is. He's a worldly speaker. He goes and he speaks, and I'm sorry that I don't have his name, so I can't take credit for the story. But he's like this guy was going, or this king came across this holy man and was asked him. He said he asked the holy man, "What is heaven?" And the holy man was like, "I don't have time for this. I'm en route to go somewhere." And the king was like, "How dare you talk to me like that? I'm the king. You cannot talk to me like that." And then the holy man was like, "That is hell. You're in hell." And then he's like, and he had this moment, and he's like, "You're right. I'm in hell. It's what I make it." And then the holy man was like, "Now you're in heaven."
I think that it's beautiful what you said about Jesus and your personal. Because I think it's a personal romance. Everybody's relationship with the divine. I have a hard time using the word God now because it's been so abused.
Sure.
And people have created this this punishing father figure. I mean, my father was not punishing; he was a loving figure. But they've created this like judge. And when things emerged, there were certain laws put into place, like the law of gravity, laws of physics. There's spiritual laws too, which is the law of cause and effect. I mean, you throw something up, it comes down. There are certain laws that had to be put in place to keep everything moving in an orderly way. One of them was the law of cause and effect. So nobody punishes us. We punish ourselves. There's no outside force that's punishing us. We create our own future, and we have to take responsibility basically for our situation. It's much easier to say, well, you're going to be punished. And I think that the institutions created fear in order to keep people in line, to keep people, people control others through fear. But I think that as a species, a large portion of the human population is outgrowing that now, and is rejecting doctrine, rejecting any kind of authority figure that's going to tell you the way it is, because you have to develop your own relationship with the universe and find out your own truth.
Well,
Bottom line is everybody is on their own search.
Yeah, no, 100%. I just heard today, knowledge is power. That's all. I know it's an old saying, but the more that you know, the more that you gain that strength to like kind of question things. Like that curiosity comes up and you start reading more about reincarnation. Like I've been researching this theory about, or this hypothesis that Jesus was, between the ages of 12 and 30. Like, where did he go? There's nothing in the
India.
There's nothing. Yeah, that exactly right. Like I've just been researching that. It's fascinating.
They say in India that he came to India. I have to tell you a story. After I published my first book, My Journey Through Time, and friends had told me, to put my name on it and all that, I did. I got an email from a friend of mine, a Christian theologian, Catholic theologian. He had been the head of the Merton Institute for many years. And he said, Dena, I've just read your book. I have to talk to you. And I thought, oh no. I was all prepared to say, take it like a good novel if you want. But I didn't call him back. And he called me, wrote me again and said, Dena, I have to talk to you about this book. So I called him and he said, after reading your book, I started researching this. And he told me about another professor of Christian theology who was also a psychologist. I can't remember the name of the book, but he recounts story after story of children who remember their past life and talk about it a lot. And the parents go check it out and it's all true what they say. Amazing stories. I never pursued this, I never read the research in this area, but he started investigating it. And he said to me, there's so much research in the past 20 years by psychologists, people who've been cured of phobias because they've remembered drowning in the past. And so they had a phobia of water. He said that it's hard to not accept it today. And so I've read polls that about 40% of Americans accept the process of rebirth. That's amazing. That wasn't true 20 years ago.
What do you think it was 20 years ago?
It might have been, a fringe group, maybe less than 10%, but I think that people who don't consider themselves Hindu or Buddhist, like this man who is a Christian theologian, it's not a contradiction with your beliefs, because I believe, in the Bible, they talk about reincarnation. John the Baptist was Elijah.
Yeah. It makes sense to me. Well, like people think about like, oh, how can we possibly live more lives? How can we possibly come here more than once? And I'm like, you're here now. Like, how crazy is that? Like, to think that you're here now. Your body, you're living many bodies right now in this lifetime. Like, do you remember being an infant? Do you remember being a toddler? Do you remember being a teenager? Where you're at now? Do you remember? Your body changes your entire many bodies in this entire lifespan. But your soul, do you feel old? No, your soul never really changed. It's like right here. Unless you develop, obviously awareness and that, educational, gain. But as far as like, I don't feel any different than what I felt when I was 21, but my body is decaying. My body is changing. I'm 38. Like, my body is different. So I've lived many bodies in this lifetime. And to think that, okay, well, maybe I've been here, 10 times before. Like, it makes sense. It's just like, what? And then I die. Let's say I go to heaven and I'm sitting up there just hanging out, like, sitting on a cloud, just hanging out like for eternity. Like,
your desires are not done. Your desires are what pulls you back. Or, suppose you always wanted to be a great musician, but you didn't get to be a great musician in this life. Circumstance didn't allow it. Mm-hmm. You're going to come back, and at some point you're going to be a great musician. Or, you didn't get the love of your life. You're going to want to find that fulfilled. You're going to fulfill that desire. So we can't have everything in one life. I mean, you don't get perfect health, the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect work. You don't get everything in one life. You get stretched out.
What scares me though, Dena, is like I've done so much work in this life where I become more advanced in my spirituality. Like I'm scared to start from scratch in the next one if that happens. Like I pass along and I go and whatever happens, and I enter back into this earth, and scares the crap out of me thinking, oh man, I gotta do it all over again and figure it out. Like what if I end up totally different circumstances? Did you ever
there
think
were
about
ways to deal with that.
Yeah.
As I said, at the end of my last life, I met my guru, but circumstance didn't allow us. He was just passing through. But in this life, at a very young age, the age of 20, I started following his teachings, even though he'd already left the body. So I think that the latter part of your life is very important in terms of seeding your future.
Mm-hmm.
For the first part of your life, you're really working out karma from the past. You're trying to find your spot in life. You're trying to find your right relationship, the right work. But in the latter part of your life, you're beginning to sow the seeds for the future. And one can more consciously make the transition. I mean, a fully awakened being doesn't lose consciousness. There are many stories of yogis who are conscious throughout the whole process of leaving their body. And there are yogic techniques for leaving the body in that in-between space and then more consciously taking another form. But for those of us who are not there yet, you can still, you choose your parents. I mean, you can choose what kind of environment you want to be born in, whether you want to get an early start, be born into a spiritual family. I mean, of course, one has to learn to walk and talk again. That's true. For most of us, we have to learn the basics. We have to be toilet trained all over again.
Yeah, I'm going through that now with my daughter's gonna be 3. This is my third child. She's gonna be 3 in December. Ugh. I'm gonna watch her though very closely. Like as she grows 4, 5, 6, I'm gonna be asking her questions. I'm like, so what'd you do your last life? Just ask her things, like just see, because a lot of children, like Carol Bowman is a psychologist that did a lot of research in past life regressions with children. Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia, same thing. Some of the factual information that these kids talk about, and then they go back and they fact check the times that they're talking about, and it comes true. Like, there's children that talk about being in wars, and they go and they fact check it, and they actually find the person. Like sometimes these kids have names, and they go back and they find the people that they were, and it's incredible. And they can point to that picture and say, I think it's in Netflix. There's a documentary, Surviving Death. There's a University of Virginia psychologist there, the doctor, and he specializes in children reincarnation, past life. And they actually had an instance where the kid was able to pick out the person, and they went to that family to to verify. But by the time they found the family and put everything together, the child was probably I think 14 or 15 years old. So the memories weren't there anymore. So he was seeing a lot of the material that they're presenting, like photographs and wedding albums and things like that. And the kid's like, I don't know any of this anymore. But when they would videotape him in his earlier life, when he was 6 or 7, he's spitting this stuff out and talking about his past life. It's just phenomenal. There's just so many cases. How can you say that this is not a thing?
Well, that's what my friend, the theologian, was saying to me, is that there's been so much research that there's no, you just have to accept it. And I found with my own kids that the first few years, their past is very present with them. And then you can see by the time they approach 10, 12, it's already fading away, because they have to get focused on this life. I mean, it could be very confusing if you're remembering all these things from the past.
Absolutely.
So there is a purpose to it. And I must say, when I had my first experience, it was destabilizing. It really was destabilizing because I couldn't pull myself out of some of those traumatic experiences.
I just had one recently. I'm sorry, were you going to give me an example? Because I just remembered one that.
Tell me about your experience.
Tragic. So I'm getting up. I'm getting ready to go to work. No, I wasn't getting ready to go for a run. Excuse me. And it's like I don't know how to explain this. It was like it just felt so devastating to me. So I don't know what era it was. I don't know what time frame it was, but it seemed like maybe I was a female. I don't know. I was just in a presence, like I could see. And there was like, I don't know if it was like I could transport, like somebody was pulling something, like a wagon or something, and it was like had some animals on it, some dead animals or whatever, like, and some slaves. Like it would seem like they were very tribal. And this is just saddening to even think about, like, but one of them, it was, and they were dead. They were there. I don't know if they were like transporting them because they had died off the farm or whatever, or I don't know what year it was or whatever, so it's very hard to kind of interpret that, but they were transporting them, and like one of them was still alive, and then they like took her out and like beat her, and like it finished the job. And like I witnessed that, and like I woke up and I felt like just like I felt like I was there. Like I could smell it, I could feel it, I could, like, it was just, I don't know what sparked it. I've never had that such a vision before. And it like, and even now, like feeling that, it just is devastating.
So that's a memory from someplace. You can't place it in
make
time.
That up. You can't make that up.
Yeah. So we have these memories, and yet in order not to get distracted, we have to suppress them.
Yeah, because I couldn't imagine being like, I don't know. I mean, I just couldn't imagine, like, I just, maybe I'll like you, like when you meditate, it'll pick back up sometime or something. But I don't know what the detail or the context was of that. It just felt so super real. And I can only imagine what, because children, you see them all the time. Like they'll daydream, they'll hang out, they'll just kind of be, in their own little worlds. And I can only imagine what they're experiencing. And then having something like that, like if it was so dramatic that they're, like even there's some theories, not, I guess, shouldn't say theories because they haven't been proven, but some psychologists have thought, with children with autism that are very small, that don't want to talk or be, physical contact with adults, like they could be having a tough time in the past life, like they just don't want to come into this body, like that stuff makes sense to me now. The more that I look at it, and the more that I look at children and how they react even with autism, like what if it's like they just don't want to come into this body and be here anymore, so like they might
have had a traumatic experience in their past, and so they're very withdrawn into themselves, afraid.
Have you ever, I'm sorry to change the subject, but I'll forget to ask you this. Like when you're over in India and you're with some of these high spiritual people, like, do they do things like, I guess you're over it now, where like, Ram Dass talks about it, where before he met his guru, like his guru was able to see where he was at, and like, did things to like impress him, or not impress him, but kind of like make him realize that he was a guru. Have you experienced that like that? Like, have you ever gone to India and met with a high spiritual official or ranking person, and then they do something that totally surprises you and be like, whoa, like it reaffirms your belief in what we're, consciousness?
Well, I've seen two masters who materialized something out of nothing. Something came. In my guru's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, he talks about a lot of these powers that can come to you through intense spiritual practice. But that doesn't indicate necessarily a higher being. I mean, clearly they've attained certain abilities, right? But to me, the true miracle is the amount of love that is emitted from a being, the selflessness, the humility. So a lot of the times I knew Ram Dass, and I know many of the people who were part of his guru Maharaji's community, Krishna Das and some others. And the greatest miracle that Maharaji did, he did do things to shock Ram Dass, because Ram Dass was, he had a skeptical mind, right? And he had to shock him. But the greatest miracle was his love, the way that he just the love that he gave to the people who came, the Westerners who came. And to me, that's the greatest sign. It's the love, it's humility, and it's the selflessness rather than any kind of power, because sometimes there's misuse of power.
Sure. He talks about, like, I listened to Ram Dass's biography, and he talks about, I guess they call them cities,
the powers, yeah.
And like one of the gurus was trying to like impress Ram Dass and coming and following him, and like would impress him with materialization, but he always stayed true to his guru. And I think his guru, the first time he impressed him was like when Ram Dass was out and he was talking about his mom, and I guess he talked about the conversation that he had by himself about his mother, and that like blew Ram Dass away, right? And then like the love that he showed him for who he was, because if he saw that, then he sees Ram Dass as for everything that he is, everything that he, throughout his entire life, and he's like, well, he loved me regardless. He saw everything. He didn't
judge him. He didn't
judge at all. And then he talked, and then he takes all the LSD, and then he just sits there.
Nothing happened.
And then like some gurus were like, I mean, they were just taking LSD, and they're like, yeah, I prefer meditation. So that's like the level I want to get to, like the level where I've never taken LSD. I don't know. But I mean, like if gurus are talking about this is way better than LSD, then they're able to unlock that mind and explore the universe. I definitely want that. I want to play. Like, I just want to go out and create and play and just, explore the universe and understand it all and just be a part of that love source that everyone talks about. Like, that's what I want, like
that's once you decide that's what you want, everything falls into place.
I don't want to go to work 9 to 5. I want to go explore dimensions and hang out.
I think working 9 to 5 helps us gain humility, right?
Absolutely. It does.
Whatever
it
job
does.
we're given,
it does.
We do it cheerfully.
You got to, right? You got to, like you said, we come here for something, a soul contract or what have you, and we come here and like we have to do things, do certain things to grow our spirituality. You can't, if you knew all the answers to the test, it wouldn't be a test. So like you have to do things to check that box of, all right, now you've learned humility. Now you're, now you're not the same person that used to be. So let's move on to the next thing, the next lesson. And then that takes you to somewhere totally different.
This is a school. This is a school that we're in. I often think to myself, why doesn't everybody just have food to eat? Why do we need money to get the basic things to survive? That doesn't make any sense to me. Mm-hmm. Because in the higher worlds, in the other dimensions, it doesn't work that way. You can manifest what you need. But we're not evolved enough to be able to manifest what we need, and so we have to do it the human way, which is a less advanced way.
Amazon, right? We manifested through Amazon.
Yeah. We manifested through Amazon. Yeah, instead of just materializing what we need.
Yeah, right. Well, man, have you ever experienced, when you're through meditation or anything, like, have you ever experienced the out of body state, or like that oneness, or like, have you ever experienced that love, that God, that eternal being? Like, have you ever done that? Yeah.
I have,
like a lot, or is it just kind of like occasional?
Occasional.
Mm-hmm.
I've had just a few experiences like that, where you just expanded into this, like conscious of everything, and that's why I feel that love is the foundation of the universe. I mean, there's no concept of fear in the universe that I know. It's a universe of love, and there are many beings who are working to help us reach that state, awaken to that realization. And if we can just tune in with those beings, it's like you said, you have many private conversations with Jesus. I have many private conversations with my guru. I mean, it's a very personal relationship. I mean, Jesus is not the Jesus they're talking about in the churches. It's the Jesus who you sit with on a mountain and talk to, right?
Yeah.
That's the Jesus.
He comes up, and sometimes he's in robes, and I'll look at him and be like, sometimes, I mean, he jokes around with me. He'll come out and sit with me in regular clothes. I mean, what does it matter? It's like, the programming that I've had my entire life. It doesn't, it just, it's that feeling that matters. It's not anything else. The images that that been portrayed to you or on you. It's like that feeling. If that feeling is right, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of what so many young people are going through today, of just, they just don't resonate with what's come before, the institutions, the closing in, the imposition from outside. If it's not authentic experience, I mean, you only know what you know. You only know what you experience. Why would you believe somebody sitting in a pulpit telling you something? Why would you believe that?
Yeah.
You
Well,
haven't experienced
you
it.
don't know what you don't know, like you said, right? And then the curiosity sparks, and you're like, okay, well, why do we do this? Like, why is it that I do this? Why is it that I have to do this? And then you start questioning that, and then it leads you to something else, and leads you to something else, and then boom, you're here having a conversation with you about reincarnation. Beautiful stuff. Dena, I can talk to you all night. I love talking to you. Love your book. I love everything you're about. How can people connect with you?
Well, I have a Facebook page. I mean, I have an organization called the Global Peace Initiative of Women. We do a lot of dialogues and spiritual dialogues, and then we have a Facebook page, and we have a website. The website for that is gpiw.org, Global Peace Initiative of Women. But my Facebook page is the Dena Merriam public page, or Dena Merriam author page. And I do book readings. I'm doing some readings now from When the Bright Moon Rises. And I'll be coming out with a new book, which goes back to the time of Krishna. So there's a lot of stories about ancient India, and that new book coming out in the fall. But so I keep writing. I keep writing.
Keep writing. I'm telling you right now, you keep writing. Don't you stop. Because I love you're so talented too as a writer. I can see how these lives link up with each other.
In that book, I became a Taoist. I didn't know much about Taoism before I wrote the book. But I suddenly was living this Taoist life, and I found Taoism to be so beautiful, so simple, and so beautiful. And in so many of my books, the message that comes through is this need to reconnect with nature. I mean, Taoism is very much about being in harmony with the rhythms of life, with the natural world. The ancient Vedic religion was also very much about that, because the ancients were much more attuned to everything, to the heavens, to the stars. I mean, they read everything by the stars. And we are so divorced from that now. Our lives are so separated from nature that we have lost a lot of the innate wisdom. Temples used to be forests. People would go into the forest to sit and meditate and to receive messages, or sit by a river and to receive messages. So I think that reconnecting with the natural world is an important part of the messages that I'm hearing right now. And through reconnecting, then you're reconnecting with the higher forces which govern nature. Sure. So yeah, it's great talking to you. And I'll be doing book readings on my public page, Dena Merriam author's page, and just having conversations about the different things that I see and experience.
Well, I'm definitely going to read the next book, and the book after that, and the one after that. What do you want your legacy to be? I know that's kind of the more that I think about the idea of that question, it's kind of like, I don't even care about legacy anymore. Like, it's not even about the legacy. It's about the progression of who I am. Right. And then everything falls into place as far as the universe and the spirit and this, source. But if you had to have a legacy, what would you want that to be?
I never think about a legacy. It's like you were saying, it's not something that I think about, but I think my legacy would be retelling our ancient stories in a way that makes sense today. So many of our ancient stories have been twisted. I mean, you find it even in the Abrahamic, going back to, Eve being the source of all the problems, well, most likely whatever happened, they did together. It wasn't that Eve seduced Adam. I think we need to retell our stories with our understanding of today, because understanding is more developed today, and that's what I'm trying to do in India. I've retold the story of Ram and Sita through the eyes of Sita. In the traditional telling, she's very much of a secondary character, but the way I've told the story, it's through her eyes. So I think I would like my legacy to be a retelling of the stories in light of the wisdom of today.
Beautiful. Love it. Dena, thank you so much for joining. This has been fantastic. I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom, sharing your work with us, sharing your spirit and your just energy. Thank you so much.
And thank you. It's been wonderful to be here.